Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, dear people, I would like to introduce Dr. Gאורג Sóldner, which is a very experienced pediatrician, first in Munich and now in Switzerland, and he's together with Matthias Gierke. They are taking care for the responsibility on the medical section, and we are going to have a huge topic today. And it wasn't so easy to get Dr. Sóldner with us today. So I suggest that we just start, and I would like to ask people to put the mute, and we shall leave in the second hour. We shall leave space for questions. Questions can be also written in the chat. So if we are starting now, we shall make a pause around 6 o'clock, which is 5 o'clock in Germany, and we shall make a 15 minutes break, and then we shall go to the second hour. So thank you very much for everybody who came on such a winter day. So please, Gאורג.
Thank you. Thank you, Meron. Yes, I'm a pediatrician and I've been working in Munich, and I'm still working there. But I've been working in Munich in the hospital for about 8 years, in 2 different hospitals, also in intensive care units. And then I'm in my practice, working together with other colleagues. So the treatment of children with asthma was one of my special topics in my practice, which is focused on children with chronic diseases. And asthma is, as you may know, one of the most frequent chronic diseases in children worldwide today. And this is very interesting because this is a new development in the last about 50 to 60 years, that more and more children are suffering in a chronic way by asthma. And today I will try a little bit to introduce you in our anthroposophic view and treatment, especially treatment of children with asthma, with the different types of asthma. And I'm very open for all your questions. I have not prepared too much input now that we have more time for questions, because it is a very wide range we have to cover of different treatment situation, different children, different situations. And also the climate and the situation in Israel is very different from Germany. So we will see. And I will share my screen now. Oh, I see that I'm not able to share the screen. May you change it? Sorry, Meron, that I can share my screen. The host has to enable me that I can share the screen. I hope you can do that so that I can show my presentation. It's not possible yet.
Just a minute, Gאורג, just a minute. I will.
Okay. And it is interesting, in the time when anthroposophy was founded in 100 years ago, asthma was more a topic in adult patients at that time. And okay, I think I can now share the screen. And yeah, I hope you can see my presentation now. Can you see it?
Yes.
Okay. And one moment. Yeah. And in the last 100 years, asthma has become more and more frequent in children, in childhood. And so we may ask ourselves, what is the background that more and more children are suffering with a chronic inflammatory disease of the lower airways? You know that in earlier centuries, tuberculosis, for example, was very frequent, and still today in many countries of the world, especially in poor countries, in countries with many children with hunger, tuberculosis is very frequent. So we see that this organ, the lungs, is dependent on nutrition. We know in many also chronic diseases that the course of disease is dependent on nutrition. Asthma is more chronic lung disease in the rich countries, in the Western countries, in the industrialized countries. There we have not so much hunger in children, but we have also many children with, in a way, poor nutrition, poor quality of nutrition. And for example, in the United States, we know that children living in poverty who have no hunger, but a low quality of food, especially taking in a lot of industrialized food manufactured in industry with a very low quality, that this is a trigger factor, a risk factor, and mediated by the situation in our digestion, in our microbiome, which develops in the first years of life and is dependent on the quality also of breast milk. A lack of breast milk is a risk factor of the variety of nutrients we take in, the quality. And so a first factor is that the quality and of digestion, the quality of food, the quality of our biodiversity of our microbiome is a main factor also for the health of the lungs. And on the one hand, when we suffer by hunger, then we see more infectious chronic diseases like tuberculosis. But on the other hand, and this we see today, that, for example, antibiotic treatment in the first year of life is a proven risk factor for asthma. And cesarean, especially a planned cesarean section, here you can see is a risk factor for asthma. And also we have now a new study here we will publish next year that shows that the earlier the first inactivated vaccines are given in the first year of life, we also see more children with asthma. So if you start the vaccination program with inactivated vaccines, I do not talk about measles vaccine because they're in the live vaccines, we have not this effect. But in the inactivated vaccines, we see that they have a detrimental impact on our immune system. They foster the so-called Th2 answer of our immune system, which relates to allergies and also to asthma. So we see there are also clinical studies, and there's a very famous study on anthroposophic lifestyle and allergy. It was published in 1999, was the first study worldwide who provided evidence that lifestyle has a deep influence on asthma and atopic eczema, and that children with an anthroposophic lifestyle in this study of Sweden, it's a comparative study, had a much lower rate, asthma rate than children with a conventional lifestyle. And so the frequency we face asthma in our pediatric practice today is not independent from our life. And today we know we should reduce sexual rate, we should reduce antibiotic use in the first, especially in the first year of life and in birth management. And so we are learning, and perhaps we will learn also a little bit to adapt vaccination programs to the learning processes of the immune system in the first year of life, so that we possibly can lower asthma rate in a preventive way by wise case management in pediatrics and what we call the anthroposophic lifestyle, which includes breastfeeding, includes a high biodiversity of nutrition, keeping the children warm, and so on and so on. These are all helpful elements to prevent asthma, which is, I think, the most important task we have. It's very interesting. 100 years ago, Rudolf Steiner was asked, what is the background of asthma? And he said, well, asthma is something we cannot only understand looking to the body, we have also looking to the relationship between soul and body. And at that time, he said, it's 100 years ago now, and he was speaking about adult patients with asthma. Well, we have to go back even until the time of pregnancy of these patients. So, and he said that recurrent and irregular shocks and sorrows of the mother during pregnancy have a deep influence on the lungs and on the mucous membranes of the lungs. And it's interesting, he said, recurrent and irregular shocks and sorrows. Today we would talk about stress, about even toxic stress in pregnancy. And when we are looking to pregnancy of today, especially in the rich countries where we have a lot of asthmatic children, we see pregnancy is not a time of joyful expectation. It has become more and more a time of sorrow, of stress, of controls, of fear that this child might be disabled by genetic disorders or infectious and so on. So mothers today suffer a lot of stress. We have also stress in the relationships between men and women, a lot of parental stress factor. And when I was a young resident in my hospital and saw a lot of asthma children, I did not know this quote of Rudolf Steiner at that time. I often realized that these children who came now and I had to give them phenoterol and so beta symptomatics and so on, that I realized, well, the same medicine is given in pregnancy to prevent preterm labor and or to suppress it. And more I became aware that how important is the story of the mother and the child in pregnancy and birth, and that one important background is that the protecting coat of the mother's body and of the mother around the child in pregnancy was a little bit was not safe enough, not strong enough for both. And so one background of asthma, and this is also a term Rudolf Steiner used, is a little bit homesickness. It is the longing for a safe home, the longing for feeling protected, connected, and also in parental relationships which are where deep conflicts or parents are separating. We see also later that this is an important stress factor for many children with asthma. But also from the immunological point of view, we know today that if the mother, for example, is living on a farm and she is working with animals and in daily work, then the asthma rate is much lower. Also in the United States, we saw there are some special populations working in farming with methods of the 19th century, very old style methods in farming. They have a very low asthma rate. And today we see that the dust in the air of these farms containing a lot also from the stools from the animals. And so from the bacteria in the stool of the animals, but this dust has a protecting effect against allergy and asthma. And we are living in very clean houses. So this is a hygiene hypothesis of asthma, but we are living in houses which are clean, where are used often a lot of chemicals to keep it clean, and that there are no smells. But exactly this environment is not protecting against asthma and does not stimulate our immune system to develop a healthy balance in answering all the stimuli from. The lungs are a part of the bowel in early embryologic times of development. They are separating from the bowel, and we have to polarize the motion in our lungs, where we are breathing in and breathing out from our digestive tract, where the motion is always going from the mouth downwards. And so I told you that the microbiome development, especially in our large bowel, has a deep influence on the immune system, maturation of immune system, and also on the immunity of our lungs. But also what Steiner calls the inner appetite, the engagement of the child in its digestive system, plays a very important role, because all these steps towards full development of our microbiome in our bowel are directed by our own immune system, by ourselves at the end. So anthroposophy teaches us that the human soul is not only present in the head region or in our consciousness, but it is deeply engaged in our body, and especially in our bowel, because the bowel is a specific system for animals and humans. It shows motion, secretions, a lot of processes, also aggressive processes by which we destroy all the nutrients we have taken in and digest them. So there we have developed a deep engagement of what we call the astral body, our soul organization, in our digestive tract. And now Steiner gave us a hint to observe how deeply engaged is the child in its digestive system. And we see that many children with asthma have problems in this engagement. They have a specific relationship to nutrients. So there are many children who have a low level of appetite, especially during asthma, but not only while it is an acute situation. And they prefer only specific nutrients and avoid a lot of others. These are the more tender, slim boys and girls who are very intelligent often and aware of the whole environment, but they are not well connected with their own body. On the other hand, we have also more and more obese children who look like well-fed, but on the other hand, they have not a real good relationship to their body and a good sense of saturation and a sense for the quality of what they eat. So this lack of inner appetite can show two faces. On the one hand, children who have really a low engagement in their digestion and they have not strong upbuilding forces in their body either often. So the soul gives not enough impulses to the vital organization. And on the other hand, we have children who often have also psychological problems. We know many of these obese children have an inner tension and have not a good relation, a good gut feeling and feeling for their body and sensitiveness for their body. And when we strengthen the soul's engagement in the digestive tract, we often can improve the situation of an asthma child. So bitter substances, for example, help the astral body and eye organization, we say in anthroposophic medicine, so that help our organization, which is regulating and enforcing these processes which are necessary for good digestion. Bitter substances can engage our soul in the bowel on the one hand, and on the other hand, they have a releasing effect on our bronchi. So bitter substances, we can even inhale bitter substances, can give a release to our bronchi like beta sympathometics, so like phenterol, or they have a similar effect on our bronchi on the one hand, and they enhance our digestion on the other hand. A good digestion is a form of aggression at the right place. Our digestive system is an aggressive system. It begins with the work of our teeth, and we destroy the nutrients in our bowel. And what we can observe in children with asthma, especially with severe asthma, they have problems to defend themselves. They have problems in their balance between tolerance and aggression. Also, from an immunological aspect, asthma is a too tolerant state of our immune system. So we have to strengthen the self-consciousness. And also, when asthma is cured by our therapy, then the children become stronger to defend themselves, to find their position in the class. And I tell the parents before that if our cure is successful, maybe daughter or their boy is not so, not so easy to manage as before. So children with asthma typically are those children the teacher loves them. And but we have to see that they are not too nice. So I see there is a question in the chat, something, no, oh no, it's only your, okay. Now we go on. An important aspect when we want to treat asthma is to become aware that what I call the united airways, that we know that the upper airways and the lower airways are connected in their function. So many children with asthma have a blocked nose or are breathing through the mouth. And when we look to the functions of the upper airways, the nose breathing, then we see the nose is cleaning the air, is wetting the air, adapting it by the nitrooxygen, which comes from the sinuses. Nitrooxygen is a substance which releases the bronchi, which opens them. And so when we are breathing in through the nose, we take in a substance which has an impact on our lungs and is opening the bronchi. And when we are breathing through the mouth, we miss this substance. And warming, which is maybe more important in Germany than in Israel, but it is important that the air which we are breathing in should be warmed up to at least 32 degrees Celsius. Even in a very cold winter day in Germany, we are able to do that when we are breathing through the nose. But when we are not breathing through the nose, and this is relevant, for example, in exercise-induced asthma, when children exercise, they're practicing sports, and then they develop asthma, we know the air is not as warm as if they would breathe through the nose in a calm way, and that a cold air can induce an asthma reaction in the lungs. So breathing through the nose is a very important element of asthma therapy. And when we try to practice sport, we know today that the child has to practice at least for 15 minutes, step by step, increasing of its exercise and engagement, that the lungs can adapt to the new breathing situation. On the other hand, we know that by specific therapies we developed in anthroposophic medicine, like eurythmy therapy on the one hand, which is a therapy practiced by movement of our limbs, and on the other hand by speech therapy, where we are practicing speech exercises, we can influence asthma. Because when we are practicing eurythmy therapy with our arms and legs, we see that our limbs movement has a direct effect on our lungs. And when we become aware that in former times when our lungs developed, in the transition from the sea to the land, animals develop their lungs, and on the other hand, they develop the limbs. So the lungs development and the limbs development is dependent from each other. You know that the thyroid gland, the hormones of the thyroid gland are needed for both, for the development of our limbs and of our lungs. And so we can not only induce exercise asthma by sports, but on the other hand, by eurythmy therapy, we can also cure asthma by limbs movement when this, when we practice a movement which is done fully aware by our soul, when we are present with our soul in our arms and in our legs, and we are not using the body like a machine, as we do in sports. So eurythmic therapy, and on the other hand, speech therapy has shown an effect on asthma. And both I would recommend for a sustainable treatment of children with asthma. So now we step in a little bit into the practice of asthma treatment, and we see that we have different types of asthma. And we can say we have wet types of asthma and dry types of asthma. And you know that the asthma crisis normally is a situation where on the one hand, we have the spasm in the muscles, on the smooth muscles of our bronchi, and on the other hand, we have a very dry mucus, which cannot be moved out by coughing. And this is the most critical situation, especially when it happens in the night. This is the most dangerous asthma crisis, that in the second half of the night, we develop such a spasm and a dry asthma attack. At that time, our own body steroid level is very low. We are not in our body normally. And when in this situation, an asthma attack happens, for example, also in adolescents, we see that they have been in the disco or so, and then they develop an asthma attack with 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. This can become very dangerous, accompanied by fear and anxiety and panic. And if they are then using conventional reliever, phenoterol or something like that, and if they are doing that too strongly, so if they have not a good education in asthma treatment, then we see also deaths by conventional asthma treatment, which is done in a not appropriate way. So we have to say this dry asthma, this classic asthma, is probably also the most dangerous asthma. And there, an education of the children and teens and adolescents, what we call asthma teaching or asthma schooling, is very important to prevent such severe asthma crisis and even deaths in asthma. And also there, the conventional treatment and the appropriate management of the conventional treatment is very important. On the other hand, we have these little children with the wheezy bronchitis, or often called also happy wheezer, which is very frequent. More about 20% of all children in Germany and in European countries show a wheezy bronchitis. This is something which has often a good prognosis, and thus is not a classic asthma career, but something which is typical for early childhood. And there we have a wet situation, and where the bronchi show swelling mucous membranes and are not mature as an organ now, which is filled with air, and what we call the etheric body, the life organization, the organization working in our fluids of our body, is under control of our forming forces from our soul organization, from our astral body and our eye organization. So this wheezy bronchitis is, in general, shows a good prognosis, and the conventional treatment is like cosmetics. It does not change the course of disease, and there we can replace a lot of conventional drugs by anthroposophic medicine. We can do that in all these forms of asthma, but on the one hand, we have this classic asthma where we have also life-threatening crisis situations. And on the other hand, we have also very frequent forms of asthma which are not so difficult to treat. Wheezy bronchitis and infectious asthma triggered by infections of the upper and lower airways. This is one group. The dry bronchospastic and also asthma with a psychosomatic background is another type. Then we have this exercise-induced asthma in school age and between 6 and 12 years. And then we have allergic asthma, which becomes more and more frequent. Allergic rhinitis and allergic asthma. And in terms of prognosis, we see that children who have, for example, exercise asthma and allergic asthma with 6 or 7 years, they quite often have also asthma with 15 years. So there, in this group, we really should engage, because in childhood, asthma is more frequent than in adults. And some specialists say it is the most frequent chronic disease in Western countries in children. But on the other hand, childhood is also a very good time to cure asthma. And in my experience, most of these children we can cure. It is not only by the natural course of disease, we can really influence a whole life when we become able to cure asthma in children. And this is our ambition in anthroposophic medicine. And what is the problem in conventional medicine? Conventional medicine is very important for the treatment in acute situation and for safety reasons, so that we could really reduce mortality in asthma to a high degree. But be aware that, for example, 2016, about 157 children died in the United States of America by asthma. So children can die by asthma. And they can also die by conventional asthma treatment when those medicines based on adrenaline or the beta sympathomimetics were introduced in medicine, the mortality rate became higher than it was before. And we have to learn to use these medicines and to teach the children and parents to use this medicine in an appropriate way. Otherwise, they can also become dangerous. Conventional treatment enables many children to practice a normal daily activity and have a good quality of life and reduce bronchial hyperresponsiveness. On the other hand, the conventional treatment, and I do not talk about biologicals now for very severe forms, especially of allergic asthma. I speak more about the more common conventional treatments. They are based on adrenaline and cortisol, and these are hormones of our adrenal glands, hormones of awakening, our process of awakening, and also the introduction of birth. These processes are mediated by these hormones, adrenaline and cortisol. So we see that these hormones are now also the basis of our conventional asthma treatment, by which we make the children even more awake, we put them really in the day awareness, in the day awakening. We enhance this process, but we know by this therapy, we cannot prevent lung remodeling, we cannot prevent a chronic damage of the lungs by this treatment. We can care for a good quality and of life and so on, what I told you, but the chronic course of disease is not really effectively influenced by this management. And the reason why this is the case is that the other side are the night processes, are the processes happening in the night, the upbuilding processes of the lungs. Be aware that the lungs at the moment of birth are not fully developed, that the alveoli are only 16% of the alveoli are developed yet in birth, and the rest will be developed in the first 8 years of life. There are a lot of upbuilding processes happening in our lungs during childhood, and these processes mainly happen in the night, not during the day, and they are even, in a way, cortisol is a substance which even can damage upbuilding processes when it's used for a long time. And the anthroposophic treatment, on the other hand, is a treatment which gives life to the lung, which enhances the upbuilding processes. And my experience in treatment is that the combination of both, and then more and more replacing conventional treatment by anthroposophic treatment, is not only a very sustainable and successful treatment, but also a treatment which avoids a chronic damage of the lung. Steiner, interestingly, when asked for the treatment of patients with asthma, said, well, we should, in the morning, strengthen the soul, the astral body, to permeate the body, to regulate the body. So he also recommended to enhance the awakening process. And to do that was his proposal by tannins, for example, by oak bark, which contains a lot of tannins, not so nice in the taste, but you can also buy these drops of Veleda and give them every morning, or prepare a tea. I've written it in my textbook, Individual Pediatrics, so Meron can share it with you. You can prepare a tea of oak bark and give some spoons of this tea every morning, so that this taste can enhance a little bit the awakening process of the soul. And on the other hand, Steiner recommended a plant which is not very bitter, I have to say, but it is in the direction of bitter substances in the evening. He said, to open the life organization, the etheric body, for what the soul impulse, the breathing impulse, for the forming influence of these breathing processes on the upbuilding processes of the body, so that in the night, the processes of growth and organ development is in accordance to the needs of our soul and spirit. So that he said, in the evening, we should enhance the upbuilding processes, the growth processes, but in the direction of that they are the right processes we need in the next morning, so that the lungs do not get deformed or show a remodeling processes, which is the threat in chronic asthma, that the lungs more and more lose their normal form and structure. So we have to avoid this, but we have to enhance the upbuilding processes in the evening, and in the morning, the awakening process of the soul. And he gave one example, which many anthroposophic doctors practice as a basic treatment, 5 to 10 drops a day from each of these substances, or some teaspoons of the tea. You can also keep it in the fridge for this tea for a week. You have only to prepare it once a week. And this is a practical example. But you will see later that and this was a development I practice. I saw more and more that, especially in school ages, this swing in the therapy, that you give a medication for the morning or exercise for the morning and a medication for the evening, is very important for a sustainable treatment of asthma. Now, sorry, I just want to check the time. One moment. Some remarks on the different types of asthma. The wheezy bronchitis, there we see a swelling of the respiratory epithelium triggered by viral infections, a congestion of mucus in the airways. So the lungs are becoming gut-like, I say. So the lungs are originally part of our bowel, of our gut. And here they become a little bit similar to this status. And on the other hand, these children often show a quite good appetite. The level of appetite can tell us how critical the situation of the lung is. If a child has a good appetite, the situation is never critical in the lungs. And they have also nice families quite often, everything is all right. And we see that they are too lively in a way, that what we call the life organization or etheric body is overwhelming the physical structures. And on the other hand, the warmth organization is not fully mature. They have problems to develop high fever. They have quite often elevated body temperature, but not high fever and not a normal temperature. So it's something in between. And there we have to help them to form their body, to form their lungs. And there we have a typical medicine in anthroposophic medicine. And so we want to promote the transformation of the lungs into a breathing organ. We want to promote the forming forces and strengthen the immune system and the resistance against infections. And this we can do by external treatments. I will talk later, but first I want to mention this metal, substance which can help to enhance the forming forces in the lungs. Here you see antimony, a metal, which is a very unique metal. I have not time to talk about now about this metal, but at least if you see this picture, you can imagine that this metal is something which can help to dry out the lungs, to restructure them, to overcome the swelling of the mucous membranes. When you see in the form of this crystal of antimony, the specific features of this metal. And another substance which is close to the metals, arsenicum, a toxic substance, like antimony is also a toxic substance, has a substance which cannot take on a fluid quality. It is a solid element, and then it sublimates into the air when you heat it up. And these two substances together, there we win a medicine, Stibium arsenicosum, here it's mentioned, which enhances these forming forces, and we can use it in bronchiolitis. Bronchiolitis is in moment very frequent in the moment. RSV, bronchiolitis, a very important and effective medicine, and we can use it also in the happy wheezers, especially when there is a more severe wheezy bronchitis triggered by a damp and relatively cold weather. And we give it 6 times a day. These are little children, so we have to administer our medicine quite frequently. And I can really recommend it if you want to make an experience with the treatment of anthroposophic medicine. This medicine is, yeah, impressive in its effectiveness. And we can, on the other hand, practice external treatments. And here you get my slides after my lecture. Here you see a website address, a website link, where you can read the instructions how to practice a quark or farmer's cheese compress or wrap in all those children, little children, with this situation of the swelling of the mucous membranes. So it is not a spasm which is which is prevailing, but the swelling makes the problem, that the air is a little bit trapped in the lungs. And by this farmer's cheese compress, it is striking how we can improve the situation. Many children fall asleep when we are practicing this wrap, this compress around the rib cage. And also, even in children with bronchiolitis, I practice it. And it is a very helpful situation, a very helpful external treatment. And on the other hand, we can also calm the children with a warm lavender oil compress, especially in the night, calm down. And we can, so this is more an evening application, and in the morning, we can use thyme oil in these children. These are examples for an external treatment. Another preparation of antimony is a basic treatment for asthma, I would say. This is Tartarus tibiatus. This is also a specific antimony preparation, and antimony with wine stone, something which coming from ripening the grapes, and sorry. And by this medicine, we can help to dissolve mucus in all forms of asthma and enliven the circulation, especially the venous circulation. And I here give you 2 possibilities of medicines, of anthroposophic medicines we can use. And last not least, the diet in wheezy bronchitis. There we try to avoid cow's milk or sweets and prefer a vegan diet in these children. Then often also they improve in the course of disease. So these are my remarks on the wheezy bronchitis. And the wheezy bronchitis is a type of wet asthma, of swelling of the mucous membranes caused by viral infections. But this can also happen by allergy. So allergy and viral infection at the end, both can at the end show a swelling of the mucous membranes. And we say that our life organization, that the etheric body gets out of control of the astral body, so that we have this wet situation in the lungs. And therefore, now Steiner, as the founder of anthroposophic medicine, recommended 2 fruits. And these fruits show leathery shells, both the lemon and the quince. Cydonia is a quince. And these fruits show a specific feature, a specific quality that we can say the formative forces in these fruits are oriented from outside to inside. When you look to a lemon never gets sweet. A lemon always remains sour. It is not a fully developed sweet fruit, but it remains in a stage where the fruit still is sour and bitter. Also in the shell shows a bitter taste. And when we use this substance now in treatment, we enhance the astral body, we enhance the forming forces, and we achieve that the mucous membranes, the swelling of the mucous membranes gets reduced by application of this medicine. And also the quince is a master of control of fluids in the fruit, and you have to cook it for eating it. So the liquid in the fruit is completely under control of this fruit. And the application of medicines containing now the juice of these 2 fruits is very helpful, not only in wheezy bronchitis, but also in asthma, which is an allergic asthma, because there we at the end have the same situation, or a similar situation in the mucous membranes. And Velida is preparing a nose spray on the one hand, so we can use this substance in the nose. And even in conventional treatment, we know if we put steroids to the nose, it has also an effect on the bronchi. Steroids also, cortisol, also reduces the swelling and the inflammation in the airways, but we can also influence the inflammation. There are also preclinical findings which support this, that the lemon extract can reduce inflammation in the airways. And so we have a medicine, Gensido, a medicine of lemon and quince, and we can combine it with quartz or plumbum silicicum, I will talk about later, and give this by inhalation. So, and inhaling these substances can help to replace steroid inhalations or avoid them when we use these substances for prevention, for example, of seasonal asthma. And we now come close to the break. I just want to mention this plumbum silicicum and quartz. These are minerals. The quartz shows a is a very hard mineral, fully transparent, with a strong form. And this, to combine quartz and Gensido, the lemon and quince, this can strengthen the astral forming forces in the bronchi and also of our eye organization by the quartz. And so our therapy is more sustainable when we combine the fruit and the mineral in our treatment. And for children with allergy, we use this plumbum silicicum. I show you here, that's the substance. It is we combine the quartz here with lead, a metal. You know that lead is used for isolation and a protected space from influence from outside, radiation and what else. Lead is an isolating metal, and here we use a potentized lead. It is plumum silicum D20, so it is not toxic at all, but it can have a quite strong influence in children with allergy, that they lose their hyperresponsiveness, and that the level of allergic reactions on whatever the child is allergic on, for the fur of animals, or on the flourishing plants in springtime, or what else, it is a very important metal to decrease allergic reactions and to overcome pollinosis and allergic asthma when you are using it for a longer time. So this is plumum silicum is the most important metal mineral therapy in allergic asthma in anthroposophic medicine. So far, I will present our therapy of 2 other asthma types and then be open for your questions. And we start again in 12 minutes. It is then 6:15 in Israel and 5:15 in Germany. And you may note your questions on the chat. And yeah, I see you in 10 minutes back. Thank you.
We're gonna fly. We're gonna fly. Get tired. We're gonna be so happy. We're gonna fix our state of mind. We're gonna be like crazy. We're gonna finally be fine. That weird desert, here's the fun. And we're gonna live forever. And we're gonna change the gender. And we're gonna find it sunny and shining. We're gonna find it in fun. Yes. Yes. Troy and I are living together. Oh, good nice. If you want to do it for a minute, do that thing. Really want to think. Open the camera. Lean.
You are on mute, Meron.
How are you, Gאורג?
I'm doing well, I think, in the moment. It is much to do here, very much, but I'm fine.
Less traveling in the world?
Oh yeah, the world, we have huge problems in the moment, very. But here at the Goetheanum, we have a good collaboration, I have to say.
Good.
Medical section, but also in the Goetheanum. And
Good. And the IPMT continue in a way, or the different IPMTs?
yes, they continue. And we have often hybrid formats in the moment, so that we provide some lectures online, and we have the groups are active in the countries, and the people are meeting in the countries. So they are partly working on their own and partly via Zoom lectures. But nearly all IPMTs are going on. Yes.
Good, very good.
And I think the people are more active in their countries because they cannot travel.
And you and Matthias all continue to travel to the different countries, or?
No, it was last year. It was really impossible to travel. Now Matthias will travel to Russia, and then I will travel to Romania, but Asia still is very difficult to travel to. We will see. The colleagues from India will come to Switzerland in April, so we hope this will work. Okay, we go on.
Yes, I think.
And then we have really time for exchange. I know that it is much input, and I hope I can now bring it in a short form some important messages for asthma treatment, and then we can discuss it. So we were talking about potentized lead and quartz, strengthening the boundaries of the body and lowering the hypersensitiveness, which is a big problem today, and protecting against pollinosis. And I showed you this picture. I just want to stop here my slides and make a drawing which can us a little bit more show what is the problem of the child with asthma. And especially when we are looking now to children with allergy, we see that today often we see this situation, the child, and now we are looking to the soul of the child, and the soul of the child is completely absorbed by informations, communications, all this, and also not only from his own environment, because here the child is not living separated from the caregivers, from the mother, from the father. So we see often that these children with asthma have a close connection, especially to their mother. So you may imagine here another soul, and a lot is going on in this connection and in the soul of the mother. And on the other hand, these children have a more poor connection to the lower part of the body, to the digestion, to their limbs. They are very aware of the whole environment, but they are not very grounded in their own body. And I mention here the mother typical because many mothers of asthma children have a close relationship to the child, but also often an ambivalent situation in their own soul. And they are also often very much under stress. And what we, on the other hand, see quite often is a more poor position of the father in the family. Fathers often are more, in a physical sense, more embodied in their body, not so full of ambivalent emotions. But in asthma families, we see often that the child and the mother has a very close connection. The relationship to the father is often weaker, and the father has quite often also a weak position in the family. This is a constellation I observed quite often. And the one consequence is that the balance between the upper and the lower part of the soul embodiment is also one-sided. And when you think what could be helpful, when we think about to cure this situation, we want to strengthen the embodiment of the child so that the child gets more grounded in its body, gets a stronger connection to the limbs, which is a quite male quality in a way. A man has a stronger muscles and is more embodied in the limbs than a woman, typically. And we see that we have also to care for the balance in the relationship between man, father, and mother, and a little bit to separate child and mother on the one hand, and to connect or reconnect the child with the father more. And therefore, sometimes it is helpful that in a modern family, father take over more responsibility than 30 years ago. But it is not the question of man and woman. It's maybe also to lesbian parents or to gay parents. That's not the question. But the question is really to connect the child with the lower part of the body, and that what we call triangulation, that the relationship between child and both parents gets better, is getting better in balance, so that the child is not too close to one of the parents, and has so also the chance to separate from the parents in a better way. Asthma children are very aware on the expectations of the parents. They often show a high level of ambition, and in our therapy, we have to care that the child has the chance to find more his own place and is not fully directed by the expectations of the adults and caregivers and teachers. So this is also relevant for the therapy of allergy, because also in allergy, we are too connected with the environment. When the plants are flourishing, we are also flourishing with our nose and our bronchi, and we have to separate from the environment. We have to be able to take our own position independent from the life of plants or of the fur of animals. And one instrument to strengthen that are bitter substances. So here, the absinthium, sorry, I just forgot the English term. Wormwood.
Okay.
The wormwood, sorry, the wormwood is a plant. It is very bitter, very warm. It strengthens our immune system, the resistance of our immune system, and it can help the children to improve the digestion, to strengthen the immune system, to have a lower rate of infections, and also a lower level of allergic symptoms. So I hope you understand a little bit that on the psychological level, this embodiment, this separation from a too strong connection with others, and also on the level of the body, these bitter substances, we follow the same goal of embodiment of the child, of incarnation of soul and spirit, which gives us the strength to resist the influence of the environment in a better way. The classic dry asthma, what is the essential of asthma, worsening by different triggers, psychological triggers, infections, what else, with a bronchospasm, with a trapped air in the lungs, with anxiety and panic, not only of the child, but also of the parents and caregivers, and a high tonus in the muscles, especially in the upper part of the body. These children show, when you ask them, oh, please breathe in, they are breathing in a way which is not harmonious. And this asthma is something we can, I think, treat in a very sustainable way by anthroposophic medicine, and more replace conventional treatment. And we have different possibility to treat these children. One are our external treatments. And here I wrote down you an asthma massage we can do on the back of the child with both hands. We begin here in the region of the in the neck region, and we go down with both hands on the back, and then divide our hands, follow the course of the lower ribs as far as into the flanks, and remove our hands, our warm hands, I hope. And this asthma massage can be very helpful in an acute asthma situation. What also is very helpful to bring the soul down to the feet. So you saw in my drawing that the astral body, the upper astral body, the soul shows a congestion in the upper part of the body. And when we now are doing a massage, a warm foot bath, a warm massage of the feet, in a foot bath with ginger or mustard powder, which warms up the feet and strengthens the circulation in the legs, then this also causes a release in the bronchi, and so can be very helpful. And with copper ointment, we can enhance the effect or make it more sustainable. Copper is our main metal in treating these children, and we have a typical copper medicine, copper aceticum, relaxing the cramps and spasms, and relaxing this hypertonus of the soul in the upper body. And there is also a copper mineral, olivinite. This is copper and arsine. We were talking about it before, and this can help especially very stressed children with asthma in school age. And we give it normally, oh, it's not written here, but we give it normally in the evening. A very important plant soil, this is a very bad picture in the moment, but a very important plant is tobacco for asthma. You know that tobacco on the one hand is a plant which causes asthma. So smoking mothers in pregnancy, the children show a remodeling of the lung even after birth. So tobacco has a strong influence on lung development and can cause remodeling of the lungs and chronic lung diseases. And also tobacco is the plant which has a very strong potential to make you addicted to the use of tobacco. And so it replaces our own soul via a toxic agent, nicotine, which has now more and more a forming influence on our body, which our soul should have. So we should form our body by ourselves. So we should regulate the warmth of our hands by ourselves. So when we are smoking, then our hands get colder, our circulation changes. And on the one hand, this helps us to control nervousness, to stay awake for a longer time. Tobacco enhances the day side of our soul, but on the other hand, damages the night side, damages the upbuilding processes. And it's very typical that in puberty, when we want to be strong, we want to be cool. So tobacco gives us the illusion of our inner strength, but at the end, it's not our strength, it's the strength of the cigarette. And replacing our own soul by a toxic agent like a cigarette can damage our lungs in a very deep way. On the other hand, medicines made from tobacco in a potentized way are main medicines for asthma treatment, especially of the classic dry asthma. So I noticed here 3 medicines, and it's interesting that tobacco attracts copper from the soil. Tobacco is a plant with a rich content of copper. Tobacco is also a very vital plant. It's a plant which has really 2 faces. The one face you see here is the vital green leaves of this plant, and on the other hand, the poison, the toxic agent in this plant the alkaloids in this plant, which destroy our vitality at the end, which also take away years of life for smokers. And by our potentization of tobacco leaves, we can win a medicine which on the one hand enhances our living organization and gives a release to this astral tension. And just to note, by researchers found out that nicotine, that the toxic agent in tobacco, shows different effects dependent on the dosage, and even contradictory effects dependent on the dosage. So what we claim in homeopathy, that a higher potency may have the opposite effect of a mother tincture of the same substance, is proven for nicotine by conventional research. You may Google the Nesbitt paradox, it is called, that for nicotine, we really know that the same substance shows different and contradictory effects on our body dependent on the dosage of the substance. The last metal I want to mention is iron. Iron we use in anthroposophic medicine for strengthening the warmth organization, for strengthening our individual eye organization in the body, strengthening the circulation and the resistance against infections. Our immune system works based on iron, and iron can be helpful in children with exercise-induced asthma, with exercise asthma. Exercise asthma is very interesting. I told you, on the one hand, it is a cool down of the lungs by mouth breathing in exercise. But on the other hand, it's also a problem for a child, that the child is not fully embodied and has problems that in exercise, now the lungs are not serving for the gas exchange in exercise, but they are now closing, and the child has to stop, to stay. And the iron medicine strengthens our embodiment and can be very helpful to overcome exercise asthma, which is not easy to treat by conventional treatment. A very specific iron we use in anthroposophic medicine is the iron coming from the cosmos, the meteoric iron, which contains also phosphorus, and is a specific iron composition which does not exist on Earth. And this meteoric iron can also be helpful in children with recurrent airway infections, to give it every morning, and children with exercise asthma. And another iron with phosphorus, so ferrum phosphoricum, but a natural form, is this vivianit, and we use it in children with exercise asthma. These children often are also very sensitive children with a labile circulation and prone to inflammatory infections of the lower airways and tendency for school headaches. So there, this green vivianit can be a very helpful medicine. And again, here we give iron in the morning and copper in the evening. This is a treatment I developed now 20 years ago for children with exercise asthma. And you have to practice it for 1 year, for example, for a long time. But then in many children with the exercise asthma disappears. And this is very relevant for the prognosis of the child. We have also an iron medicine containing vivianit for acute asthma by viral infections. We can give per inhalation. And another iron composition is the Levico water, which contains not only iron, but also traces of copper and arsenic, and enhances the inner appetite, strengthening the warmth organization, and can be given also to little children with infection, with asthma triggered by infections. And we can also give it per inhalation. So to close my lecture, we were talking about asthma, different asthma types and metals. And you see that for the different asthma types, we use different metals. So the iron to strengthen our resistance against infections and to strengthen also the capability to exercise. So iron typical for asthma, which is very relevant during the day. Copper, this is the classical stress-induced asthma and also the severe night asthma, the asthma with a low level of upbuilding processes and a very strong tonus and stress by the astral body. Lead, protecting us against allergy, environmental asthma, and antimony, helping to structure our lungs in this intrinsic asthma of the little child. So thank you for your attendance, and now I'm open to all your questions, and I hope I can contribute a little bit to improve our asthma therapy. Yeah.
Thank you for your talk. I have a question.
Please.
Can you clarify, please? You were speaking about vaccination in the first year of life, live versus dead, and what the different impact is on development of asthma, if I understood you. Could you talk about that a little bit more?
Yes, I can. On the one hand, we have studies, I write it in the chat, studies by Orby, a famous Danish researcher on vaccinations, DPT vaccinations in Guinea-Bissau, and he could show that the inactivated vaccinations work in a different way, for example, in comparison to measles vaccinations, and that the children vaccinated with inactivated vaccines in this very poor African country had a higher rate of death by pneumonia or gastroenteritis in comparison to not vaccinated children, while the children vaccinated with measles vaccination, with the so-called living vaccination, they had a lower rate. And from an immunological point of view, we know that the inactivated vaccines containing adjuvants, aluminium-based adjuvants, that they cause a shift from in the immune regulation. I write it in the chat towards so-called Th2 regulated immune response, which is typical for children with allergy. And the Th2 regulated response is a response which is typical for asthma and for reduced level of aggression in the immune system. So it is a higher tolerance, for example, against viruses and other influence from the environment. So, and this is caused by, especially, for example, whooping cough vaccination, pertussis vaccination, and by the adjuvants you use in these vaccines. And now a German pediatrician did a study with 3,800 children, and we are going to publish it. And one moment, so I write it down. It's about 1,900 children were vaccinated, all in the same office, vaccinated in conventional way, and then about 1,300 children vaccinated after the first birthday, much later than conventional, and 600 children were not vaccinated until 3 years, until the age of 3 years. And here we see that the children vaccinated after the first birthday with inactivated vaccines had a 4-fold lower asthma rate than the children vaccinated in a conventional schedule. And there are other studies, the study from Canada about DPT vaccine from 2007, showing that just to begin vaccinations 2 to 3 months later than in a conventional schedule reduced the asthma rate by 50%. So we know that the very early vaccinating with inactivated vaccines is not helpful for the immune system development. It may protect severe diseases, but many of these diseases we are vaccinating in the first year of life are not very frequent in the first year of life. So it is really a knowledge today that our vaccination programs and the immune system development are not in a very good balance in the moment. That's what I can say. I'm not against vaccinations, but we have a little bit to think about the timing of the vaccinations. Yeah.
Thank you.
Please. It's also an experience in many children in the pediatric practice. You begin to vaccinate them with inactivated vaccines, and then they fall sick. Then they get infections, and we can understand it because these inactivated vaccines have an influence on the capability to defend the child against viral infections in this age. Okay.
Gאורג, we know about this transformation of atopic dermatitis to asthma.
So sorry, please repeat it. I had a little bit problem to understand you in the moment.
We know about this transformation of atopic dermatitis to asthma in later life.
Mm-hmm.
So can you say anything about the treatment of atopic dermatitis in order to prevent the asthma, or how shall we?
Yeah, to talk about atopic dermatitis would require again 2 hours, but atopic dermatitis appears in the first year of life. More than 60% of all children with atopic dermatitis show symptoms in the first year of life. So it is more on the surface, it is on the skin. And asthma develops later normally. We know today we have also a lot of children with asthma symptoms very early, but the classic time of asthma development is after the first year of life. And what I observe is that if we suppress atopic dermatitis by a very conventional treatment, we run the risk that we shift from atopic dermatitis to asthma. So we see quite often a shift from atopic dermatitis to asthma. And so in the treatment of atopic dermatitis, it is important that we follow some principle I mentioned also in the treatment of asthma, so that we improve digestion, that we care for nutrition, and which is very important in treatment of atopic dermatitis, that we strengthen the immune system in the resistance against infections. And so a sustainable treatment of atopic dermatitis always takes into account that quite a high percentage of children with atopic dermatitis also develop asthma later in their life. And but I have to admit that on the other hand, also under an anthroposophic treatment, this may happen. And it is a problem of body surfaces. So we have a skin surface, we have a surface in our bowel, in our gut, and then in our lungs. And these are connected. And so the treatment of the skin and the nourishment and treatment of our digestion in the gut and the situation in our lungs are connected. That's what I can say, Meron, but the atopic dermatitis would be a too big subject for this evening, or yeah, I think. But maybe you have other questions on experiences with children with asthma. So I'm really open to all types of questions, family structure or treatment or what else.
I wanted to ask about a little bit more about the emotional aspects. Mm-hmm. A lot of family therapists, but maybe on the a bit of psychosomatic healing, they talk about asthma as some sort of crisis with fear, great fear of abandonment from the child. That there's some major trauma with this kind of fear, and I can relate it to the model that you were speaking about, that you try to help the child to overcome maybe this kind of fear. But I wanted to understand if that's something you experienced maybe in your clinical practice, that there was some did it follow some trauma, or did it follow something like that with children that you may have noticed?
Yeah. It is interesting that breathing out is also a form of trust. Yeah. So, you have a hard day, a working day, and then you come home and then you are breathing out. So, but if the situation at home is critical, so then you will not breathe out in the same way. You will be even cautious what will happen now. Then you are more breathing in a situation which is dangerous. You are always breathing in, and you are not really in a balance of breathing in and breathing out. And what is the problem in asthma is that you are practicing both at the same moment, that in the moment where you should breathe out, you are on the other hand keeping the air you are breathing in and breathing out in the same time. So you are not in a rhythm. So when we are now talking about the psychosomatic background of asthma, I would not say that a typical background of asthma is trauma. I would say more it is psychological stress, ambivalence, and a high level of ambition, which may be quite frequent also in Israel, not only in Germany. So asthma is also a typical disease in well-educated, very successful families. And when we are looking to this drawing I made, the problem is here, on the one hand, many children with asthma have, as I told you, a close connection, typically to the mother. It's very typical to the mother. But the situation here is not an easy one, because on the other hand, this may be a mother, on the one hand, she loves her child, she is connected with it. On the other hand, she is also expecting a lot from the child. And there may be in the background also quite a severe tension between mother and father, for example, or mother and mother-in-law, or what else. So what I see is the ambivalence of emotions in a close connection and a one-sided connection in the family. So on the one hand, the relationship to mother and father is not well balanced. Maybe one of them is also emotionally or real absent. And on the other hand, this emotional attachment contains an ambivalent situation where you are breathing out and breathing in at the same moment. So you love your child, you want to do everything for your child, but you are expecting a lot from your child, and you feel a stress and overload being the only educator of this child, and you have to, the feeling you have to manage everything in the family. So a stressful situation of the caregiver with an ambivalent attachment to the child. And what really helps also in my practice is now to sort out the different emotions, to balance the situation, to balance the attachment of the child to the mother and the father, or to two caregivers. And also, for example, art therapy, when we are talking about children in school age with asthma, that the emotional life in the child becomes more independent from the emotional life of the caregivers, of the parents. This is also often very helpful. And to talk a little bit about the level of ambition in the family, so that we have a more transparent, open situation. So that's what I can say. On the other hand, I say, when we are looking to the long-term prognosis of children with asthma, they normally are more successful than the average. They are normally quite intelligent children. They are quite ambitious children, many of them. So I calm down the parents also, that they say, let your child more develop on its own, and the parents have also fear and anxiety because the children had severe asthma attacks. I think this is a trauma. This may be a trauma for the mother, that she had the fear that my child could die, or the father. So there we have really to give a release. And sometimes when you have a long going story with asthma. I remember a boy 9 years old. He was 9 years old, and I was treating him with asthma for 7 years. And with 9 years, he had a very, very severe asthma attack. So I was in the house in the night at 3 o'clock in the morning, and we had an oxygen saturation of 84%. And I put an infusion to the boy, and this helped. So slow, and I had really given everything of anthroposophic medicine, of conventional medicine. That was quite a critical situation. We could manage it without hospital, and then I sat in the kitchen with the mother, and then she told me her story, and it was a story. She had a mother sick with alcoholism, and her mother died when she was 12 years old in front of her, and she had the feeling that she couldn't breathe anymore, so she died, and so on. It was a very touching story. And then the mother said, yeah, her parents were separated. Her mother died with 12 years, and when her mother was brought to the cemetery, then she had to walk behind her as a 12 years old girl. The father was not present. So this was the grandfather of my patient was. So this was a very traumatic situation for the mother of my patient. And then she told me the asthma of her son set on when the son was 1.5 years old, and she was the first time back in the village where she was born, and her mother was buried there in the cemetery. And then the boy was 1.5 years old and was sleeping with a relative of her, and she was on a festival in this village. And then Meron, das heißt Riesenrad. Weißt du, was das heißt? So ein Riesenrad. Weißt du, was das heißt? Du musst dein Mikrofon anmachen.
Can you say it again?
Ein Riesenrad, das ist so auf einem Volksfest, wo man so...
זה מין גלגל כזה של לונה פארק.
Yeah, and she was sitting in, and so elevated, and then she could look to the cemetery where her mother was buried in this place. And when she came home, the boy had asthma, the first asthma attack in his life. And in this case, we were speaking 2 hours in this morning, what she experienced with her mother and the death of her mother, and the traumatic experience being left alone as a 12 years old girl without parents in this situation. And from that moment on, I could cure the asthma of the boy. So this boy had no asthma anymore. Now today he's 25 years old, but months after this asthma crisis, he lost asthma completely. So we have also sometimes to look for transgenerational traumatic influences. And I see that Steiner was right, that the sorrows and the stress experiences, especially of the mother, have a deep influence on our asthma patients, especially in childhood. I hope this answered your question. You are all on mute, so any other remarks or questions or criticism? So I'm really open for all feedbacks? I think we have a few minutes left.
Can you talk a bit about birth experience and asthma?
About what?
The experience during the birth.
Sorry, maybe
Birth.
Birth.
At the labor.
Oh, sorry. So sometimes the connection is not so good. Birth is the first breathing in and breathing out. And once on a congress, I met an obstetrician, and she said, well, in my hospital, I had sometimes also to care for asthma patients. And when I'm going to these patients in the second half of, typically in the second half of the night with the asthma crisis, it sometimes remembers me to what I experienced in my department with the women giving birth. And so we know that cesarean, that a birth, a planned cesarean, imagine you are an unborn child, you are in the womb of your mother, it is warm, breathing is no problem, you are connected by the umbilical cord with your mother, so you are completely in a warm fluid harmony. And then in a planned cesarean, which happens normally 2 weeks before the normal time of birth is coming, you are there is someone coming with the knife, the surgeon is coming and takes you out of the mother's womb within a few seconds. You are completely unprepared. So we know by statistics from a big Danish study with 2 million people that this event raises the asthma rate about 15 to 20%. And we know on the one hand it has influences from the microbiome, but also from birth. Such a situation that you are overwhelmed and the normal birth is initiated by the unborn. The normal birth has a physiology of awakening. They are the same hormones as in awakening. Adrenaline, cortisol, these hormones play an important role in the initiating a normal birth process. So we can say an harmonious birth is a prevention against asthma, and a stressful or an unexpected birth, like a planned cesarean, may contribute to an asthma career. And so even if we plan to do a secture because of maternal reasons or so, it is better to wait until labor sets on and do the secture then to do it in advance with an unprepared child. So on the other hand, I also remember a child with severe asthma, and I asked the mother about pregnancy and birth, and she said, well, it was a vaginal delivery, it was a normal birth, but very critical. And she said, there was one moment I was convinced my child would die. This is very important. If the mother makes the experience, the inner experience, now my child will not survive this birth process anymore. It is, and then I gave her a specific medicine for this traumatic experience, aconitum, and then the asthma of the boy improved and disappeared. So if we can explore a traumatic situation linked with the birth process, this has also an important influence on our therapy. Yeah. All in all, I would say in our hospitals, mothers make a lot of traumatic experiences which are not necessary in the departments of our obstetricians, and we should really care not only for what is happening from a conventional point of view, but what is happening in the soul of the mother. So what we should do after birth is, how did you experience the birth of your child? Also in the mothers with cesarean, it is striking when you look to pictures. You can ask them in painting therapy, please, for a painting reflecting their inner experiences of birth process. And if it was a cesarean, many mothers show in their picture that there is a zone in their inner experience. They do not know what happened. So they always worry, because in this moment of the cesarean, they were not connected with their child. They did not know what happened. And it is important to work with them that they can close this gap, and that they have the feeling, okay, now with therapeutic help, I know that my child was doing well, and so on. So the inner experience of a mother during birth cannot be recognized very easily from outside. We have to ask for it. And this has a deep impact on the child. Yeah. Okay. Any other questions? Or is it okay for you, your question? In terms of substances, our copper substance, our copper medicines are very important if there was a problem in birth and pregnancy. Copper is also the metal for traumatic memories, and especially in a region, in a time where we cannot remember consciously. So we all normally cannot remember the time of our pregnancy and birth, and if a child has experienced a very stressful situation in that time, copper medicine often improves the result of our therapy. It's also the metal. You know that pregnant women have a very much higher level of copper and a lower of iron. So copper is a good metal for problems in the mother-child relationship. And yeah.
Thank you.
Please.
Okay, Georg, I think it's time to finish. And I want to thank you in the name of everybody for this complete and clear and so meaningful meeting with you. And I hope we can have some more in the future. So I wish you much health there in Switzerland. And
good recovery from COVID.
Yes.
And, hopefully also good experiences in the treatment of your patients. Yeah, and I'm looking forward to meeting you again, and hopefully one day also in reality.
Yeah.
When the borders are more open. Yeah, thank you. And I will send the PDF of my slides to Meron now, and you can share it with all of you. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.